Seven, six, five, four, three, two, one.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Crazy Town Incorporation. Today we're going to talk about frames, whether or not to frame your canvas and what kinds of styles you should use, what goes with what, and all that information. So to start with, I wrote a little list, like an outline, that I'll start displaying soon on the screen. And basically it starts with all the styles and then it branches out to all the details that come with the styles. So I'm going to be picking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I picked 7 styles that I believe are most common and that a lot of people know about. And so without further ado, the first style is going to be the float frame. So the float frame is basically a frame that is not attached to the canvas or the drawing or whatever it is. It's just there to make the canvas appear and pop out with strength. And people use it with art that is kind of like very colorful or too poppy. And they do that because some frames take over the painting sometimes, and it's a little too much. But this kind of frame gives the canvas space. Literally, there's almost an inch or half an inch between the canvas and the frame. And moving on, the second one would be the antique frame. And so the antique frame, basically, you can already tell from the word. It belongs to like the previous era or time period. So it's like the old, back in the day type of frames. And those are kind of rich in style. And I personally like them. And you can use them with landscape canvases, with canvases that have very like simple and like tidy colors. Basically landscape or houses or architecture, stuff like that. Old architecture will go with them. Even paintings of humans and like other animals or other like living beings will go with those because of how it's like traditional, or it's antique and it's like old fashioned. Moving on, the third one would be the contemporary. And so the word contemporary means modern or present day. And so basically today, or like 2017, art is simple, and we're using a big message that is presented on the canvas, and the only reason we frame it is either just to add that outline or that boundary. And so the contemporary frame of today is very simple and is very passive or submissive, in other words, but the canvas itself tells a lot, because that's how the new era of art is. It's very strong. It has a lot of signs to it. It's very thought provoking. Our fourth on the list is the ornate, and so the ornate is in a way the antique design, but it just is a little extra decorated. It has complex patterns to it, and those add a lot of value to the frame and of course the canvas. The ornate frames are naturally more expensive because of how much work has to be done to produce such a product, and I personally don't like them, especially with the kind of art that I do. I feel like it's overwhelming to the eye, and that sometimes the wood or the frame will take the attention of the viewer out of or away from the canvas itself because of how nicely done it is and how clean it is and how decorated it is. Fifth on the list would be the rustic. And so the rustic is, by the word or by the meaning of the word, is simple fashion or countryside. And so what that represents is anytime you close your eyes and think countryside or simple fashion or like just like very like humble, rustic should be what comes to your mind, and therefore that's the kind of frame it is. And you can use those frames on canvases or paintings. That, for example, if you have like if someone has drawn a sea or an ocean or a river, not very much landscape, because landscape already has landscape like mountains and such and stuff like that, and farms. Those already have that rustic view to it, and so you don't want to add more of that using a frame. But so rivers, seas, oceans, and for example boats, those rustic frames can go on them because of like the balance. You know, one's like a good message, a good heavy message, and then the outline or the frame itself is just simple and laid back, and therefore that provides the canvas with a lot of voice and a lot of being like it's expression. It'll be able to express itself naturally. And now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 on the list is the simple one. So the simple is when you literally have like a picture of yourself, or yourself and your wife or your kids. People will just go with like the simple one. I know some people will try to use like cute frames that have like patterns on them and like shit like that, but that also is considered as simple. But simple could just like be a one color frame or like painting, and you can use it, as I said, for like, you know, your own pictures or family pictures, or picture of your dog and such, like something like that, where it doesn't have to say way too much, and the point or the purpose of the canvas or the drawing itself is not for the frame, but just for, you know, what's in it. And so last on the list would be the traditional one. And so the traditional one is kind of it's kind of important to keep in mind what is traditional, because, for example, if you're in the U.S., there's a certain kind of traditional that everybody is on common grounds with. But if you're on the east side of the planet, for example, Russia or China, their comprehension of traditional is different, obviously. And so it all goes back down to the roots and the history of the country or culture that you're living in. And you can just do that either by Googling, but I wouldn't just Google it because that's very subjective. You can just like go to any like downtown area of any country or city that you live in around the world, and look for like the oldest, those old painting shops where like this painter has just like been there forever, and they just sell their business to local buyers, and they're just like a local artist, and they'll be able to show you what traditional is and what they started to work with when they were coming out. And so that's the list. And so now to branch out. So the list of what we just talked about, every single one of them can have every single one of what I'm gonna talk about. So I'm also gonna be putting an outline up for this. So there's colors, there's tone, which can be dark, light, or medium. There's the finish, so the finish of the frame itself. It could be antiqued, distressed, gloss, metallic, and that basically controls the medium, how strong it can look or how passive it can look. We also have frame width, so how wide the frame is. We have narrow, there's medium, there's wide, and there's extra wide. And you can see extra wide in all the old antique paintings, ones like that go down for decades. They used to do that a lot because they added so much value to the painting itself, and it was hard to create such a piece, and so the time and effort that was put into each piece like that was a lot, and so it was very valuable. Moving on, there's the frame depth, and so the depth of the frame is when you look at the side of it and you see how deep the frame goes. And so some canvases, some stretched canvases just have like 2 inches of wood where the canvas itself is stretched and stapled on, but some of them are thicker, and so that requires a deeper frame. And even more people will like to add a really deep frame to their canvas if it's like a past relative or a king of the country and stuff like that. And so that makes it a huge piece that just stands out so strongly, and that branches out to shallow, medium, deep, and extra deep, which of course would be almost like 5 inches or 10 inches, no pun intended. Frame material would be the last, and so frame material is metal, wood, copper, gold, silver, bronze, and so you can literally use any kind of, even platinum if you're rich enough, but you can basically use any kind of material to create your own frame for your canvas, and that also increases the value of the art itself. And so each one that I said or that I talked about, any of these options can be applied here, and it's just your own. It won't change, the diagram or like the message behind the frame or even the style of it. It'll just add more orientation to it, and it'll just make it look fancier, and that more thought and effort was put into it. And that's most important as an artist, especially if you're trying to sell it to art collectors or have your art stand in museums and such. You want to pick the strongest frame that will help the canvas come to life. You don't want to have like the simplest canvas or painting, and I say canvas a lot because it just depends. Sometimes you can have like a print canvas or like a painting, or you can even just have like a splatter of paint these days, and some people will call it paint. Some people call it art. So I just refer to it as canvas. But you want your frame not to be objective of your art, but to be more subjective, as in carry on the subject or the message that the canvas or painting itself is carrying or is providing. So for example, this painting that I'm working on, this is like not even like the first layer that I'm putting on here, but so you can't really tell what kind of art it is, but it's more contemporary. But I wouldn't use a contemporary style frame for it because of the colors and because of how strong the colors are. My favorite for how I want my paintings to look or like be displayed as is the float frame. So the float frame will give the painting itself the space to talk or to deliver the message, but will also be there to carry it. And so it's a very strong display, and it's my favorite because of how different it is and how not traditional it is, even though it's been around for a long time. But just having like the space between the frame and the canvas is, in my mind, is just it's a great way or a genius way of displaying your art, because you're not relying on the frame itself to talk for the art, and also you're not leaving the art to stand alone by itself. It's just like it completes each other. It's very yin yang kind of mentality or like vision. And art is all visual, and so when you want to see something, when you see something and it relates to you, I feel like float frames help art that, like my style of art, express more and more strongly when I use those kind of frames. But for a similar kind of painting that other artists are doing using similar colors that I would, I think using the simple frame would work here, because you can just like pick a certain color that contrasts with all the main colors that you're using on the painting, and therefore that will just complete the whole thing and it'll just stand beautifully. And so simple would definitely be good. Contemporary would be good too, but I don't know personally if you would want like a two-tone frame, holding your painting, because you have two more colors that you're adding on to the painting. And so unless you already had that in mind before like you started painting, you already had in mind how the frame is going to look like and what colors you're going to use, I don't think that will work for everyone. And so so some of the tips that I would use or tell whoever wants to frame their art is think about your frame first, what colors you want, and how big you want it to stand. What is the width? What is the depth? What is the finish? The finish, for example, gloss or metallic. So gloss is like very, I don't know, shiny. So glossy is like shiny. You can shed some light on it and it'll just reflect back. Metallic is more, there's no shine to it, and it just stands there passively. It's like a deep, warm color. Antiqued is like there's like a lot of like wooden chips in it, and like a lot of like little detailed cuts and bruises and stuff like that. And the tone, for example, can be dark, light, or medium. You have to think of all those before you start creating a painting, unless you just don't want to frame your art. But the question is always to frame or not to frame. And I think it's important to frame because it just adds more value to the art. But some paintings, don't get me wrong, some paintings don't ever need a frame at all because they're so strong and they can just hold on their own. But that doesn't mean that any other painting with a frame is not strong enough. But it's more visual and more symmetric when you add the frame, and that's where the mind sees the beauty. So like the way our mind works is when it sees symmetry or when it sees contrast, it gets stimulated. And so frames are symmetric, and so that is a check on the stimulation mark. And then contrast is, of course, colors and the circles or triangles that you're using and where you're fitting them and how you're fitting them. And that breaks all the way down deep into male or female energy that you have in your art, in your painting. And when I say male or female energy, you have to keep in mind that means male is in a square and then female is in a circle. So a little lesson about male and female energy, especially for artists. So the male energy is very direct and is very straightforward, and the female energy is very flowy and is very wavy. And both will get from A to B, but both will take different routes. And so you can be a businessman or you can be a drag racer. And you will both have a successful career, for example, but you both took the different route. You can both eventually probably make the same amount of money, but you took different routes. And so the male and the genders here don't matter. The male and female words represent the way you go about things. And so the male energy will go from A to B in a straight line, but the female energy will go from A to B in a wavy line. And if you don't understand what that means, that's your problem. You have, I don't know, I feel like my audience should already know all that stuff, but I like to put it out there so people can keep in mind how deep and how expressive art can be, and that it's more than just, this artist just threw some paint out there and drew this mountain and drew this village and that came out. Like, no, most of the time it's visionary to the artist himself or herself, and then it's execution. It's all execution from there. So I'm the type of artist that likes to see it and like even dream it sometimes before I can even put it on a paper or a canvas. And there's a lot like me, but I don't think there's enough. People these days, or artists who want to launch their art career will start by doing, for example, celebrity art, or will go by doing the most like viral art. And so they'll take like the hottest topic out there in social media or in the internet or even on the news, and they'll just paint it, and they'll just like put it on there and then put it in people's faces and do ads for it. And that, don't get me wrong, that's art, because that, like, you're hustling your way through, and it's great. I'm very supportive of all that. But the way I see it, or the name I want to create for myself, I want it to be that no one saw it coming. You know, no one, like, it took many people a lot of time to understand and see the truth behind what I paint, what I draw. And I always try to keep a lot of hidden messages and a lot of subliminal and like very thought-provoking icons and lines and even like symbols. And because I feel like once I do that, like even after I die, someone's gonna look at that painting and one day they're gonna say, "Wow, like, did you ever think that this is what that means?" And then someone will go, "No," and the word will spread, and eventually it'll just become like a very iconic piece. And I feel like that's how iconic pieces are created. It's just literally from your imagination. So this painting itself, I relied a lot on visionary art. So basically, I would see it before I would draw it. Like, I would think about it for days or weeks, and have like I would have like the vision in my head first before I start executing on canvas. Even the colors had to be picked very subjectively, and it all started with I was gonna draw or paint the what was it? The Fall of the Damned. And the Fall of the Damned is a great piece of art. It's an insane piece of art. It's the day that Satan and all his followers were kicked out of heaven for defying God by two angels. And it's an insane piece. It's huge. It was even previewed in Batman, and in the Batman the movie, where there's like a angel on the bottom and the devil on the top, and it was actually flipped. I don't know if you guys remember that, the Gotham City one. It's a great painting, and I wanted to do that because I wanted to draw my own version of it, and so I kind of copied a little bit of what was the what the historical one looked like. But then when I started painting, my brush would just like want to do other things, and so I decided to rely fully on my instinct for this one and dig deep inside to where I'm at in life and what my trail of thoughts is, and where I want to be and how life is and the people that are around you, how they're affecting it, and every morning, what every morning looks like. And so all that was just like consumed and then thrown out on like this painting. And I've split like the work that I'm doing on it into several other videos, and so all those videos are on the channel. If you just look around, you can just find them. Like the video before this was probably of the painting, the one before it was probably of the painting, and then there's probably two more coming until the end of it. It's gonna be a great painting. I want to put it up for an auction and see how well it does. But I of course want to make a print of it first and keep it to myself. I'm also gonna be doing prints while I try to sell it. I'm gonna do prints and try to sell them, and see what happens and where people will put it, because I feel like it's a very expressive piece of art, and it's big. I think it's 4 by 5 feet, and so those are great dimensions to hang on a wall, especially in a living room or like in an office. If you can like look at this painting and relate to it, you'll definitely want to put it somewhere where it's like thought-provoking for you and it drives you, or like you look at it and it comforts you, and that's always the purpose of the paintings. Later on, I don't know, it's not in this video, but later on down the line, I started adding insane colors to the painting itself, and it just came to life. And so this is just the second layer, which is why it looks like that. But it's more is coming. I really hope this video helps a lot of people pick what frames to use and where to use them. It's always hard to pick a frame, especially if you've done the art yourself, because it's like, oh, I have so many options. But to me, what helps me take the decision is the instinct. You have to really be aware of where your instincts are at and what feels good and what doesn't. And don't worry about what other people think. If you're an artist and you're expressive and you want your own thought or vision or idea out there, you put what you feel is right. But if you're the kind of artist that relies a lot on audience and relies a lot on people's opinion and want to be very like satisfactory with your art, you should definitely take a lot of people's advice and input before you put a certain frame on your canvas. And that's basically where it breaks down to. Now for this one, I'm definitely going to be putting a float frame, as I said. I'm thinking of like a metallic, not metallic tone, but like a actual metal frame around it, because it's very solid and it's very strong, but also it's not that colorful, so it won't be overwhelming for the canvas or the painting itself. It'll just be like a strong outline, a strong border, and it'll be like a strong door, a heavy, big door for what's in it, what it's holding, and the space between the between the float frame and the canvas itself is like the bridge where like your thoughts and your imagination travels from like the metallic world, the materialistic world, the solid world, and then the space, and then the canvas itself, the painting, into like the imaginary world, the intangible world, the rich, strength and imagination and visionary art. And when you start looking at like the little details in the painting, you'll start seeing so many things, and it'll just take your mind on a trip. And that's fun, that's what painting and that's what art is all about. There's this line or a saying that goes, art is made to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. And so if you're very comfortable in life and you're very innocent, and you ever see like a kind of art that disturbs you, that's literally the message behind it. It's like there to do that, so it can impact your life in a way where a change will occur, and hopefully you'll be able to do more with your life than just go to work, come back, eat, pay bills, watch Netflix, see movies, and have a little hobby. I think the life that we're living was designed for us like this. Like, I never chose coming to life. I never chose to be, at this age, at this time, at this date, in this country, or this nationality, or this body, or anything like that. And so once you realize that once you poke at the world, it's going to poke back, you're going to wake up, and basically your third eye, in other words, will open, and you'll be able to see the world on a much different perspective and a much different level. And just keep in mind that the world is not the way it is because this is how it is. No, like other humans have made this. Other humans have built this. The system that we live in is not holy at all. Like, it's not like this like divine system that is just godly and there's no questioning. Like, no. Other people created the system. And so just like you can be wrong sometimes, you can be so certain at one point of your life, but then someone can come along and prove you wrong. And you should keep that in mind when it comes to the way we're living. Like, we can be very certain of our lives and the way it is, but also, is it really how it's supposed to be? That's the real question. So always ask yourself, what am I doing? Why I'm doing it, and where it's gonna take me. I feel like we all ended up here because of the actions or the decisions we've taken, but also majorly because of what decisions our parents have taken and their parents have taken. And so So that line that we've been traveling down until where we're at now, the blood that we're carrying is other people's decisions. And so go create a change, make a change, subscribe to my channel. That will definitely be helpful and will help serve the purpose of Crazy Town Inc., which is a thought-provoking community for all artists and other audience. Peace out, everyone. Please help support by subscribing and sharing the video. Thanks. I really hope everyone's having a good day. Bye bye.